The Dominican Republic just got the biggest economic news in its entire history, and no one's talking about it. I'm going to show you in this video just how important it is, but even bigger than that, every move President Abinader makes is with one sole purpose in mind: a better credit score. Let's break this down. So what is a country's credit rating? Well, it's very similar to a personal credit score that you or I might get. It's not only how countries are rated, but it's a different scale and a different set of raters, if you will. And the credit rating provided for a country is the same ones that are provided for most corporations. The three biggest rating agencies are Fitch, Moody, and S&P. And they have this massive scale going from the very bottom, which is a junk or speculative rating, all the way to the top, which is investment grade. The better the score, the lower the risk, therefore the better interest rate terms and the more money that you attract as a country or a company. I'll show you the chart. See right here, this line, every rating below that is in the junk or speculative category. Everything above that line is investment grade. If you're a country in the junk or speculative rating category, there's certain restrictions that you have on money that you can attract. Places like pension funds, mutual funds, index funds, and insurance companies cannot invest in a country or a company rated speculative or junk. And in addition, your financing terms are going to be less favorable. Look, let's go to the second part of this video, how this works by using a personal example. Let's say somebody has a 500 credit score. They may have a $150,000 mortgage at like 9.5%, along with, let's say, $20,000 in credit card debt, and that's going to be 28% or more in interest rates. In addition, there are certain positions that you're not able to apply for in the financial sector if your credit rating is 500. So your income potential may be tapped out, or at least limited. Now, if that person makes some sacrifices, changes some things around, does some things that are not comfortable but necessary in order to get their credit rating from 500 to, say, 700, a lot of things open up. They could potentially get bigger jobs and earn extra income. They could refinance their mortgage, reducing their payment on that $150K by $300 or $400 a month. They could consolidate their credit card debt to get rid of that debt in a shorter time. This is why credit rating is so important to this country, because like the guy with the 500 credit score, kind of where DR is, with some changes and moves, an investment grade credit score could change everything. So where does the Dominican Republic sit right now? Well, the big news is that Moody's, one of the three, just upgraded them from this BA3 rating to a BA2, inching them ever more closer to that investment grade rating. This after a year ago, all three agencies upgrading DR's credit rating to where it is today, or where it was with Moody's before this move this year. As a result, they are limited on the amount of capital they can attract, and they're paying a ton of money in interest. In fact, interest payment on the debt is a major line item, which takes me to debt in general. A lot of people will say DR is taking on too much debt, and I think we have to be cautious with that rhetoric. DR has a sub 60% debt to GDP ratio, or maybe at worst, it's right at 60%. Now that is the upper end of healthy, but it is still healthy. And I'll be honest with you, for DR to get to where it needs to get to, it's actually going to need to take on more debt, pushing it closer to 65% of GDP, especially if GDP drops just a little bit based on economic factors around the world, in order for it to accelerate forward. Think of it like a startup company that needs a capital infusion. It knows it can get from here to there, everything's set up for it to do so, but it just needs some capital to get it across the finish line. DR is going to take that bet. Mark my words, and I think they're going to take that bet by the end of 2025. More debt to fund more infrastructure, and really to make progress on the one thing they need to make progress on for all of this credit rating to get into the investment grade. I'll share that at the end. So what would an investment grade credit rating mean? First and foremost, DR could take about $26 to $30 billion of its debt and refinance it at about a point and a half less than what it's paying right now. That equals billions of dollars in actual money saved over time. It could service its debt cheaper. Second, it could take on investment. Think selling government bonds to insurance companies internationally. Again, index funds, pension funds, so on and so forth. Groups that want exposure to a market that's developing and has reached the investment grade credit rating, like the Dominican Republic, with all the other fundamentals that are in place, political stability, reduction in corruption. It's a big deal. DR could attract a lot of capital and can do it at more favorable terms. But here's the big thing. How could all of this be achieved? Here's the actual math on this. We'll throw it up on screen. Currently, the Dominican Republic's tax revenue is about 13% of GDP. Countries with an investment-grade credit rating, they hover around 25-26% of their tax revenue as a percentage of GDP. So DR needs to literally double the percentage of tax revenue as a percentage of GDP in order to get into that investment-grade mix. That means an additional $13 to $14 billion in new revenue coming into the country's coffers. Now, I'm going to explain how they can get there, but I want to talk about about corruption and misappropriation of money because I know for a lot of people that's on your mind. Here's the deal. In our example of the guy with the 500 credit rating, how he spends his money is not a worry of a credit rating agency. Just a matter of whether or not he's over his head on debt and can't make his payments. In other words, if the dude was buying crack cocaine and gambling his money, we would all look at that as irresponsible use of his funds. But Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, they would just say, well, is he in a good debt position? Is he making his payments? And does he have a decent credit history? Well, then his credit rating is his credit rating. Whether he's doing blow or spending too much on the horses, who knows? So for those that are watching to say,
Well, if the government just spent their money the right way, the credit rating would improve.
not really. It's not that it wouldn't help at all, but it's not the smoking gun a lot of people assume it is. But let's break down some of the more popular strategies that people would bring up, including me. 1, tax evasion. This one's easy, right? Just the people that should be paying taxes, go out and make sure you collect from them. There's some movement on this, but there's a lot of range to go. It's estimated that DR's evasion rate is somewhere between 8 and 10%. The US, about 3%. If DR got themselves in line with the United States, going from, say, 10% to 3%, that would generate about $1 to $2 billion in additional revenue. By itself, far short of the 13 to 14 billion needed, but definitely one that would move the needle. The second is closing corporate tax loopholes, not making it so easy for companies to just sort of like figure out a way out of their taxes. Again, a viable option, one that many would say is the smoking gun, but again, it's about $1 billion in revenue if they did that effectively. The next one would be getting rid of international investing programs like Confitor and other tax sort of friendly investment options that people from other countries can make. And yes, that would move the needle, but you would also then offset that with reduced visits to the country and reduced investments in the country. Hey, people like me that live here or those that come and visit, when they buy goods on a credit card, they're paying an 18% value add tax or ITBIS here in country. If there's less incentive to buy here and move here, there's less of that revenue. So there's a bit of an offset. You get rid of the international tax programs, you reduce the amount of tax revenue being filtered through the value add tax system. Everything I've done analysis-wise says if you did get rid of it, you just pretty much wash it out with reduced revenue for VAT. But here's the big one. This is the one that actually would move the needle significantly and even by itself might get the DR from where it is in the junk or speculative rating up into the investment grade rating. And this is something I've talked about with business leaders here in the country. At Unsolicited, it's the #1 tactic they say moves the needle on credit rating. I'm going to tell you, but for the half of you watching that haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit the button. I hope this is helpful content for you. If it is, I appreciate you subscribing. Every subscribe is a donation to Second Mile Mission from me to support ending human trafficking and poverty here in DR. We're building schools. If you just hit the subscribe button, I'll make a donation on your behalf. Currently today, the labor market in the Dominican Republic that is formal, which means on the books, is about 45%. That means less than 5 out of 10 workers are actually on the books, working for companies that are paying taxes on their behalf or are paying taxes themselves. Everyone else is under the table. No income tax, no VAT collected, no pension contributions, nothing. And maybe even more importantly for those people, no protections from the government, because there are laws on the books to protect workers that are on the books. If DR goes from a 45% formal labor rate in this country to closer to 65, 70, it's estimated that that would generate between $6 and $8 billion in additional revenue, significantly closing that $13-14 billion gap that it needs. But more importantly, from a credit rating perspective, it shows a level of stability and a broader tax base to draw from. Companies now are on the books. They're paying payroll taxes and other taxes, with things like semiconductors coming in, providing higher income labor, middle income labor for the Dominican Republic. Sounds like almost nothing to somebody outside in the United States, but we're talking $800 to $2,000 US a month in income, and that's in the range that would actually be taxed. Below that, or pretty close to below that, there is no income tax, and I don't think there will be. But that shift, formalizing more labor, is the #1 answer to getting the credit rating up and therefore all of the benefits that come with it. But it won't be easy. DR will need to do things like business registration drives, simplifying the tax code, incentivizing formal hiring amongst businesses. They need to have programs in place that make companies want to be on the books, want to be formal, and therefore hire formal labor. Construction industry is a toughie, but there are a few around the country that are. Good news is companies like World Emblem that are moving in, who are hiring people in the textile industry, that's all formal labor, and it creates tax revenue in general, overall, for the Dominican Republic. If you watch this channel, I talk a lot about the DR real estate market and tourism market going up market, meaning higher end clientele, more expensive hotel rooms, more expensive real estate, tailoring to people that are making 200K plus and less the sort of all-inclusive cheap vibe that it's been. When you look at that move, combined with reform that was proposed back in February by President Abinader, a very unpopular tax reform bill, and you add in the focus on corruption, on projects like the train line in Santiago, on expanding the Santo Domingo railway or subway system, on trying to clean up Sosua, on bringing in A-Rod and his billion-dollar investors up in Rio San Juan, on increasing all toll booths to a minimum of 100 pesos. Everything Abinader is doing is in the interest of improving the credit rating. And I get it. If I'm him, leader of a country, I would do the exact same thing. The challenge now is how does he get through a tax reform bill that doesn't create absolute revolt? The best example I could find of this was Peru, who went from about a 30% labor participation rate to a 60%, doubling it, getting up into the investment grade category by doing a lot of the things I just mentioned, incentivizing formal labor through businesses, simplifying the tax code, and more enforcement of tax revenue that needs to be collected. I believe by the end of this year, 2025, Abinader will have a proposal that he gets through, understanding what was unpopular in the prior and trying to make adjustments that are more popular. But I'll also guarantee you this, it won't be comfortable for everyone. I go back to the 500 credit rating guy. For him to get there, I'm sure he has to give up on certain subscription services that he had before. He's got to work harder to make additional revenue. He's got to do a lot of things to go from 500 to 700, and DR is going to have to go through that as well. The biggest obstacle to that, honestly, is a word that starts with T. See if you can guess it. Drop it down below. But this word that starts with T is the absolute reason why most people that say it won't work, it's not going to be good, will revolt against any proposal to expand the tax base, even though it means a better credit rating for the country and all of the benefits that I talked about. That word is trust. See, the difference between the 500 credit rating guy and the country, the Dominican Republic, is the 500 credit rating guy, it's his own money. Like, he's collecting his own money and then appropriating it. In this case, Abinader is saying, hey, I understand that maybe we have some waste, if he is even saying that, but you get my point. It's widely known that governments waste money, and this government is no stranger to that. And now you want me to pay more in some cases so that the country could improve its credit rating and refinance its debt, replenishing its coffers to do what? Give more to corrupt politicians? That will be the biggest obstacle to anything he wants to do, even though I believe that what he's doing is the right thing. And when I say the right thing, I mean in the macro. Everybody's going to have a story that they could tell about.
Well, this person in this area will be affected.
I get it. I'm not dismissing that. Simply from a pure analysis standpoint, saying that a country or company that improves its credit rating has a better overall outlook for the future. And despite the amount of progress deniers or progress stoppers that are out there saying,
this is just bad for DR, it's bad for the worker.
First of all, they don't understand the true economics of the workers here. Guilty of this as well. To hear somebody makes $800 a month to me was like slave wages. But I've come to understand that, wow, actually, that's a very American viewpoint. And with my own eyes, I see people that are making very little money in my eyes that are happy and they have access to everything. Heck, I just borrowed my housekeeper's Wi-Fi hotspot the other day. Go figure. Again, I'm not dismissing the fact that I would love to see everybody make 50 or 60 grand a year here, US. But I'm just speaking to the point that the reality is just not that. And I've given up on being more patronizing to locals and focusing more on those that are truly underprivileged, like kids that are supported by Second Mile Mission. That's why I donate time, money, and energy there. Folks, I truly believe in my heart that we're all witnessing the rise of a country economically and politically. There's a lot that will deny that or hate on that. There's a lot that'll give me examples of why I'm wrong. I'm just giving you my analysis, but more importantly, there's a lot of evidence to support, I believe, what I see happening. Credit rating is important. It's the #1 metric in the eyes and mind of President Abinader. And that's the right move if he's looking to move this country into the developed world. But there will be people that are disadvantaged more as a result of that move. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is without someone taking the proverbial bullet. And we all know and realize that some of the least affluent and most disadvantaged benefit the least, to say the least. Now, if you want to see how companies are actually moving here, I did this video interviewing one of the top CEOs in the textile industry in the world who moved his operation to DR. He'll share why and much more in that video, and I'll see you all on the next one.